Start the clock.
Good afternoon. At the tone, time will be
Real time.
Colleagues, please stand. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Please put your right hand over your heart, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair now recognizes Senator Johnny Isaacson.
Hello. I would like to apologize in advance. I have come down with a horrible cold and feel super sick. So I'd like to lend this time to a couple of my esteemed colleagues.
This is leader time.
This is just leader time? Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to thank everyone for a great committee this last week and great caucus and the support across the board. And I would also like to make a brief statement regarding the executive order. I, along with many of my colleagues, are extremely concerned about the constitutionality of this executive order and where it begins to infringe on our individual rights. But I look forward to a great and very productive floor session and appreciate everyone's patience with this congestion. Thank you.
I now recognize Senator Chuck Schumer for Minority Leader Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. I want to take my time this morning to discuss a couple of issues that are incredibly important to me and to the nation, as evidenced from the constituent letters that have been flooding into my office these past few weeks. One of these is the epidemic of gun violence. I want to echo the sentiments of countless in this delegation that have demanded that Congress quit acting like there is nothing we can do to prevent these senseless deaths. More needs to be done to prevent people like violent criminals, domestic abusers, and mentally ill from too easily obtaining guns and using them to kill. I am asking that Republican leadership act swiftly to bring the background checks legislation senators on my side of the aisle have introduced to committee and then to the floor for debate and discussion. In addition, I would like to speak briefly about the responsibility this body holds, especially in terms of creating a budget this session. In my 17 years of service to this body, never have I seen legislators boo the president during the State of the Union. I hoped that my colleagues across the aisle had gotten that blatant disrespect for this body, the American people, and the president out of their systems after that incident. But it became clear earlier this week when legislation was rushed through committee without much, if any, input from the Democratic Party, that my Republican colleagues need to be reminded again about what is at stake if they create gridlock in this body. I absolutely do not want to see a government shutdown this fall, and it saddens me that the American people must live in fear of that happening each time Congress goes to do its job and pass a budget. Shutting down the government would cause harm to the economy and is an offense to all of the hardworking American people in this country. We Democrats want to avoid a shutdown. We want to see a fair budget that helps security and middle-class families. And we want to do the job we promised our constituents and the American people that we came to Washington to do. In order to make sure we don't have a repeat of the 2013 shutdown, we are demanding Republicans set the precedent today to hear our views so that we can build a budget together that funds the government in a fair and balanced way, without crippling the Affordable Care Act, defunding Planned Parenthood, undermining the president, blocking enforcement of a variety of important regulations from the EPA to guns, or slashing funding for education, Social Security, Medicare, and the programs and services we have promised groups like our veterans. In my view, America is a place where we all come together. It is a place of consensus. It's a place where we can work together to find common agreement. With that in mind, I look forward to today's floor session and having the thoughts, concerns, and amendments that the minority party proposes today heard, and thoughtfully considered. And with that, I yield my time.
I would like to recognize the Majority Leader, Senator Isaacson, for morning business.
I'd like to recognize Senators Susan Collins.
Hello, thank you everyone. Senator Susan Collins from again from Maine. I just wanted to let everyone know that I was out. I had an emergency that my home state that I needed to tend to and take care of. But I am fully here and I give all of my attention and I will be sending out basically my stances on everything. So that's all. Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Senator Isaacson. I'd like to go ahead and make a statement and speak about the executive order that was issued earlier this week. And going over everything with my colleagues, I'm phenomenally upset. I'm upset and I'm also extremely worried about the course we are taking as a body. When you think about the Second Amendment, the Second Amendment isn't just for protecting hunting rights or your right to go to the target range and shoot at some targets. It's a constitutional right to protect what you hold dear, your family, your home, your very lives. Mr. Minority Leader has asked us to think about what's at stake. What's at stake is our very liberty here. Our constitutional check against tyranny is at stake. So it is essential that we protect this check with the most fiery, passionate advances that we can. And when considering pending legislation, as well as this administration's actions, I cannot help but feel defensive about our very constitutional rights. And so I urge this body to consider what is at stake indeed. What is at stake here is liberty. And so to argue as this administration does that stricter regulation equals less violence is simply ridiculous. Might I note that most of these shootings, most of these school shootings have taken place in gun-free zones. Let me stress that criminals do not abide by gun-free zones. But you know who does? And you know who will help prevent shootings like this? Law-abiding citizens. A firearm in the hands of law-abiding citizens who will do what they can to help prevent these mass shootings. And when given the opportunity, can truly serve as a check not only against tyranny and oppression, but against the evil that exists in our society today. So, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Senator Gray.
Thank you. Esteemed colleagues, I would like to bring forth my thoughts on Hillary Clinton's defense during the committee hearings of the Benghazi attacks of September 11, 2012. I'm truly astonished by the level of incompetence of Madam Clinton. The more we advance in our findings, the more we realize how ill-equipped she is to even consider being our next commander-in-chief. Benghazi was a very dangerous city prior to the attack. The Red Cross and the British Embassy had both retired from the area for fear of attacks. Even our embassy had a previous incident before September 11. Surely, that should have been enough of a warning that American lives were at risk. Instead of pulling out of Benghazi or in commanding our security, Clinton did the exact opposite. She ignored more than 600 requests from our embassy to increase our security presence, and she outsourced the protection of our embassy to Libyan militias, something completely unheard of. There was no plan for extraction, there was no military assets nearby. Furthermore, after the attacks, the State Department tried to cover it up by saying that the attacks were spontaneous and the result of an anti-Islam movie. That there was nothing that we could have done to prevent this from happening. Yet Hillary Clinton herself told the Egyptian Prime Minister that she knew these attacks were Al-Qaeda-like and precisely planned. Ms. Clinton is not trustworthy, and she did a very poor job as Secretary of State. 4 Americans were killed representing our country in Libya, including Ambassador Christopher Stevens, and it was all due to the Department of State's unbelievable incompetence. I want to voice my strong support for Congressman Trey Gowdy for his continued investigation of the Benghazi attacks, and I truly hope we get to the bottom of this. Those responsible have to pay the consequences for their inactions. Thank you.
recognize Senator Isaacson to present his agenda.
Okay. So everyone should have received an agenda via email. For future reference, this won't be sent out via email. It will just be on the floor session on Microsoft, so you can all see it. It will be in by noon for Thursday. First, we will be discussing Senate Bill 4, then moving on to Senate Bill 13, then Senate Bill 14, and then finally Senate Bill 6, time provided.
If I'm not mistaken, there is a unanimous consent agreement for Senate Bill 4? Okay. So Senate Bill 4 will be argued following all rules found in the UCA. I now recognize Senator Ernst as the majority floor leader for debate.
Motion to open debate.
Debate is open. You're recognized.
I yield the remainder of my time.
The minority, sorry. Floor manager, Senator Nelson. Please speak.
Hello, everyone. I'm Senator Bill Nelson, and I'm here representing the Democratic Party as the minority floor manager on our position concerning the Weekend Voting Act of 2015. First, I'll provide statistics on how many of our law-abiding citizens are eligible to vote actually go out and vote. In the last presidential election in 2012, only 59% of eligible voters actually voted. Compared to other democratic countries such as Australia, Belgium, and Chile, whose voter turnout is at 90%. For the 2014 midterm elections, there was an all-time low of 36 voting turnout. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that we can do as a legislative branch, to make it more convenient for our constituents to vote? Our job is to represent the people, right? This legislation that Senator Ernst has proposed, and Senators Agason, Corker, Barrasso, Shelby, and Perdue, all co-sponsored, will increase voting turnout in the near future. The Judiciary Committee passed this legislation by unanimous decision, which means that Senator Vitter, Senator Cruz, Senator Collins, Senator Kirk, and Senator Ayotte all said yes to it. Many citizens' key reasons for not voting is that they couldn't get the time off work to go to the polls. Let's make it more convenient for our people to vote. So, as a legislative branch, let's make it more, okay, I said that right. Got lost a little bit. All right. The only reason a senator wouldn't want to support this bill is because they fear that more people that vote, that they will lose their seat in Congress. The 11 Republican senators who have shown their support for this bill, as well as the entire Democratic Party, stand in support of this bill. Thank you.
Can you use the remainder of the time?
Yes.
Use the remainder of the time. Okay. So both parties have yielded the remainder of their time. He just yielded the remainder of the time. No amendments were.
I said on my time.
You
It's someone else.
didn't you yield? I clearly asked you if you yielded the remainder of your time, and you said yes.
Okay, I yield my time to Senator Brown.
That cannot be done. You already yielded all of your time. So, given that both parties have yielded the remainder of their time, I'm sorry. Just next time, please. This won't happen again. So no amendments were made, even though 2 were allowed to be made by each party. No amendments will be debated on since no amendments were proposed. So that being said, the unanimous consent agreement says that we agree to vote on the issue after the conclusion of the debate, which just happened. So do I have a motion for a vote?
Motion to vote.
The chair recognizes the motion. Actually, I'm sorry. Yes, that's fine. Do we recognize, do we have a second? Okay. So we have a roll call for voting.
All right. Please respond with yea or nay. Ayotte?
Yay.
Barrasso?
Yay.
Bennett?
Yay.
Blunt?
I vote for her. Nay.
Boxer?
Yay.
Brown?
Yay.
Collins?
Present.
Corker?
Nay.
Cruz,
Nay.
Ernst,
I abstain.
Franken,
Yay.
Graham,
Abstain.
Hatch,
Nay.
Heiner,
Yay.
Yay. Heller, Isaacson,
Nay.
Kirk. Oh, sorry, that's Yay. Manchin,
Yay.
Markey,
Yay.
Merkley,
Yay.
Murphy,
Yay.
Murray,
Yay.
Nelson, Nelson,
Nelson.
Yay.
Paul,
Yay.
Purdue,
Nay.
Reed,
Yay.
Rubio,
Nay.
sorry, nay. Sanders, Schumer,
Yay.
Shelby, Custer, Custer,
Yay.
Bitter,
Nay.
Would anyone like to change their vote? You can before everything's tallied. Please raise your hand if you would like to change your vote. Please state your name and what you would like to change your vote to. Collins. Are you abstaining? Yes.
Senator Shelby changes from abstain to nay.
repeat that?
What was your name, I'm sorry? Senator Shelby changes from abstain to nay.
Senator Graham changes from abstain to nay.
Okay.
Last call.
Is that all?
Are there any more changes to be made? Okay, can we tally the votes, please? I'm actually for this. So,
The bill passes with 18 votes.
okay. The total again was 18 to 13, with a 2 abstention. Is that a majority? Is the majority 20?
No, majority is 50%.
It's like 17. Yes.
Isaacson, who are you voting? Yeah.
I'm voting for Blunt. She voted nay.
Okay, with a majority vote, this bill has passed. I hope that we can continue to pass bipartisan legislation for the remainder of the day. Okay, I would now recognize Senator Graham for the Majority Floor Manager for Senate Bill 13.
I yield the remainder of my time to Senator Heller.
The Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995 declared that it is the official position of the United States that Jerusalem is and rightly ought to remain the undivided capital of Israel. Also, on June 4th, 2008, while still serving as United States Senator, President Obama pledged that Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel and must remain undivided. The United States officials do conduct diplomatic meetings and other business in the city of Jerusalem, which is the de facto capital of Israel. However, the embassy does remain in Tel Aviv. Despite this declaration of support and due to presidential waivers, the United States has failed to carry out our promise to our Israeli friends and has never acted to move the United States embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Every sovereign nation has the right to designate its own capital, and the United States maintains its embassy is the functioning capital of its country, of Israel. Why then is it that we continue to delay the relocation of the embassy, which arguably is the most important in the Middle East? Not only have we not relocated our embassy, but our president has seemingly weakened the United States' resolve to do so. President Obama renewed a legally required waiver, which allows the administration to suspend the 1995 law requiring the U.S. Embassy in Israel to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. While the renewal of the waiver was not unexpected or unusual, the Obama administration neglected to include a key sentence that all previous presidencies have included in previous determinations. Specifically, quote, "My administration remains committed to beginning the process of moving our embassy to Jerusalem. Especially considering our unstable time in the Middle East, it is more important than ever that the United States and Congress stand firmly behind Israel. From the recent unrest in Egypt and many other forms of anti-Israel terrorist groups that are threatening Israel, Israel is constantly facing new challenges, and we have to dedicate ourselves to our alliance with them and fulfill our commitments.
Please respect the speaker who is currently speaking. Thank you.
And fulfill our commitments that we have made. In a country where security is an elusive goal, Israel should be secure in knowing that the United States will deliver on its promises. I believe it is well past time to revisit the Jerusalem Embassy Act and close once and for all the loophole that has continued to allow the Jerusalem Embassy not to open. I yield the remainder of my time.
I now recognize Senator Murphy, the Minority Floor Manager.
First off, thank you all for being here today. I'm here to represent the Minority Party as the bill's Minority Party Leader Manager. We are currently discussing Bill number 13 with the short title Jerusalem Embassy and Recognition Act of 2015. As stated, this is the bill to recognize Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel, to relocate the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and for other purposes. We would like to reiterate that this bill is a request to the President. This means that if the bill passes, it will still be up to the discretion of the President to proceed with moving the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, or to keep the embassy in Tel Aviv without consequence. The Democratic Party has a few reservations about the details of the bill, which we hope we can discuss further during the offering and debate of amendments. I will now yield my time to Senator Reed from Rhode Island.
Good afternoon, Senators. As Senator Murphy had yielded his time to me, I wanted to move to amend Bill number 13. I would like to propose to amend Section 2, subsection E, paragraph 2, as written, restriction on funding subject to opening determination. Whereas not more than 50% of the funds appropriated to the Department of State for fiscal year 2017 for acquisition and maintenance of buildings abroad may be obligated until the Secretary of State determines and reports to Congress that the United States Embassy in Jerusalem has officially opened. We would like to amend this by striking out Section 2, subsection E, paragraph 2 in its entirety. We strongly feel that this obligation not only transforms the request to the President into a hostage-like situation, we also believe that such authorizations will indeed make the job of creating a budget for the year extremely difficult. In addition, we would like to strike out Section 2.
The chair recognizes your first motion for an amendment, but can you please clarify it one more time so everyone can see exactly what the amendment does?
We would like to strike out Section 2, subsection E, paragraph 2 in its entirety.
Is there a second?
Is there
Seconded.
The chair recognizes a second for the motion. It is debatable. Does anyone want to debate it? Okay, so there's a roll call, right, for majority? Okay, can we, please state your vote.
Do we have motion to divide? Someone has to motion, point of order, someone has to motion to divide. Vote. Procedure. That's just the way it works. So someone has to motion to pull this out.
So
I'll motion to vote on the issue.
you're voting,
Yeah.
you're motioning to vote on the issue.
Yeah.
Chair recognizes your motion to vote on the First Amendment.
Thank you.
Is there a second? There's a second. Okay, we have a roll call for this amendment.
Right? Ayotte?
Nay.
Rosso?
Nay.
Bennett?
Yay.
Blunt?
Nay.
Boxer?
Yay.
Brown?
Yay.
Collins?
Nay.
Corker?
Nay.
Cotton?
Nay.
Cruz?
Nay.
Ernst?
Nay.
Franken?
Yay.
Graham?
Nay.
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 Hatch?
Nay.
Heinrich?
Yay.
Heller?
Yay.
Isaacson?
Nay.
Manchin?
Yay.
Markley? Markey?
Nay. Oh, yay. Yeah, yay.
Berkeley?
Berkeley? Yay.
Murphy?
Murphy? Yay.
Murray?
Yay.
Nelson?
Yay.
Paul?
Nay.
Purdue?
Nay.
Reed?
Yay.
Rubio?
Nay.
Sanders?
Yay.
Schumer?
Yay.
Yay. Shelby?
Nay.
Custer?
Yay.
Vitter?
Nay.
This amendment has not passed. With a vote of 15 for, 18 against, and 0 abstentions, this amendment again does not pass.
I would now like to yield my time back to Senator Murphy.
So first of all, I would like to make the point that this is not an issue of supporting Israel. This is an issue of the executive power. As the legislature, it is a ridiculous attempt to compel the president to use his executive privilege under the threat of withholding funds. There is no state other than Israel that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Jerusalem is divided by east and west. Jerusalem is a contested territory. Israel may have the right to declare its own capital, but we also have the right to put our embassy where we want it. Unifying Jerusalem is of course the goal, but doing so with the respect to the Israel-Palestine peace talks is the ultimate goal. So just for clarification, I'm going to read over all of the powers of Congress so you guys understand exactly what it is that we can do. First of all, I'd like to start off with the case of Madison versus Marbury. Walk out. Madison, this is Marbury.
The other way.
I apologize. It's taking some time. Front page.
Should have picked the page up.
Marbury. So Marbury v. Madison.
Excuse me, lobbyists, you can't be in the, I'm sorry.
One
you can't be in
moment.
the gallery.
Yeah, I yield.
I would like to pause.
Lobbyists have to remain in the gallery. Sorry.
Now.
I've chosen to take a brief pause, and I will yield my time to Senator Schumer. This will come back.
You're Jewish.
Thank you.
Calm down. Aren't we all?
Okay, I would like to take a moment to echo that this bill is to support Israel. However, without striking the funding provision that, as Senator Reed said, creates a hostage-like situation, transforming the request and going against every precedent that this Congress has ever set in bills of this nature, we will not be able to get cloture or pass this bill. We Democrats have worked incredibly hard to get cloture on a bill that looks like this but does not create a hostage-like situation. And we do not have that cloture without that amendment. Now that that's clear, I yield my time back to Senator Murphy.
So continuing with the power of Congress. Marbury versus Madison. Thomas Jefferson, an anti-federalist or Republican, who defeated John Adams, a Federalist, in the presidential election of 1800, was to take office on March 4th, 1801. On January 20th, 1801, Adams, the defeated incumbent, nominated John Marshall, Adams' Secretary of State. As 4th Chief Justice of the United States, Marshall assumed office on February 4th, but continued to serve as the Secretary of State until the end of the Adams administration. During February, the Federalist Congress passed the Circuit Court Act, which, inter alia, doubled the number of federal judges, and the Organic Act, which authorized appointment of 42 justices of peace in the District of Columbia. Senate confirmation of Adams' midnight appointees, virtually all Federalists, was completed on March 3rd. Their commissions were signed. Excuse me. Calling for silence, please. Their commissions were signed by Adams and sealed by Acting Secretary of State Marshall. But due to time pressures, several from the Justices of Peace remained undelivered when Jefferson assumed the presidency the next day. Jefferson ordered his new Secretary of State, James Madison, to withhold delivery. Late in 1801, Marbury and several others sought a writ of mandamus in the Supreme Court to compel Madison to deliver the commissions. The court ordered Madison to show cause why a mandamus should not issue, and the case was set for argument in the 1802 term. While the case was pending, the new Republican Congress, incensed at Adams' effort to entrench a Federalist judiciary and at Federalist court's order against a Republican cabinet officer, moved to repeal the Circuit Court Act. The Federalist congressmen argued that repeal would be unconstitutional as a violative of art. The Article 3's assurance of judicial tenure during good behavior and of the Constitution's plan for separation of powers, assuring the independence of the judiciary. It was in this debate that for the first time since the initiation of the new government under the Constitution, there occurred a serious challenge of the power of the judiciary to pass upon the constitutionality of acts of Congress. Hitherto, it had been the Republicans who had sustained this power as a desirable curb on congressional aggression and encroachment on the rights of the states. And they had been allowed in their complaints at the failure of the courts to hold alien and sedition laws unconstitutional. Now, however, the court in 1802, in order to counteract the Federalist argument, that the repeal bill was unconstitutional and would be so held by the court. I advance the proposition that the court did not possess the power. Thank you. The repeal law passed early in 1802 to forestall its constitutional challenge at the Supreme Court until the political power of the new administration had been strengthened. Congress also eliminated the 1802 Supreme Court term. Thus, the court did not meet between December 1801 and February 1803. On the 24th of February, the following opinion of the court was delivered by Chief Justice Marshall. No cause has been shown, and the present motion is for mandamus. The peculiar delicacy of this case, the novelty of some of its circumstances, and the real difficulty attending the points which occur in it require a complete exposition of the principles on which the opinion to be given by the court is founded. First, has the applicant a right to the commission he demands? Mr. Marbury, his commissions was signed by the President and sealed by the Secretary of State. I would also like to pause for one more moment and yield my time to Senator Brown.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. I want to take this time, since we've passed the Weekend Voting Act, to talk a little bit more about it. So on behalf of my fellow Democrats, I would like to take this time to recognize that the support for the Weekend Voting Act was in large part a gesture towards bipartisanship for this session of the Senate. And although we support this bill that we've passed, we are willing to move Election Day to Saturday. We would have preferred if Election Day had been a national holiday instead. Although moving Election Day to the weekend will help with voter turnout, we believe that making it a national holiday would increase voter turnout even more and would allow for our American citizens to fully take part in our political process. And so I would like to reiterate that we did not propose making Election Day a national holiday as a gesture towards working together and compromising as a precedent to set for the rest of this session of the Senate. And more importantly, also to address the concerns that our constituents have been having about a potential gridlock in the Senate. We wanted this compromise to show the American people that voted all of us here to do our jobs and represent their best interests, that we are still able to come together and pass legislation that benefits our nation as a whole. So thank you, and I would like to yield my time back to Senator Murphy.
Thank you. Continuing. To withhold his commission, therefore, is an act deemed by the court not warranted by law, but violative of a vested legal right. If he has a right, and that right has been violated, do the laws of his country afford him a remedy? The very essence of civil liberty certainly consists in the right of every individual to claim the protection of the laws.
Point of order. I motion to table the bill.
I recognize
Point
the
of order. You can't interrupt.
Yes, you can for a point of order.
What was the point of order?
Point of order.
To table this bill and you want to talk about another one.
Point of order, you can't motion on a point of order.
Point of order, I can't listen to any motions not made standing up.
Stand up.
How would I like to
Point of
recognize?
order. You can't make a motion on a point of order.
Yeah, motion to table the bill.
I recognize the motion. Do we have a second? I second the motion. We have a second. We have a roll call for this motion.
Alright, please respond with the yea or nay. Ayo? Barrasso? Bennett?
Stay here.
Lobbyists, please.
Excuse me.
Lobbyists, you are only allowed in the galleries.
Please respond with the yea or nay. Bennett? Blunt? Blunt? Boxer?
Nay.
Brown? Nay. Collins? Corker? Cotton? Cruz?
Rankin. Rankin. Graham. Nay. Hatch. Heinrich. Heller. Isaacson. Kirk. Yay. Manchin. Nay. Markey.
Nay.
Merkley. Murphy.
Nay.
Murray. Murray.
Murray says nay.
Nelson. Paul.
It is 128.
Purdue. Reed. Rubio. Sanders. Schumer. Shelby. Tester. Sitter.
The motion passes. This bill is tabled. I now recognize Majority Floor Leader Senator Cotton for Senate Bill 14, Protect Our Allies Act. Yes, please say I would like to yield my time to Senator right now.
So this is the Protect Our Allies Act. This act strives.
Excuse me, please respect Senator Cotton. He is currently speaking and has the floor. We will have order in this chamber. Thank you.
So we're requesting the president direct to the Treasury Department to hold or to freeze the assets of Iran to hinder their economy. But we're doing this to stop terrorism and to also bring back our hostages. This has nothing to do with the Iran nuclear deal. They're completely separate. And we also want to emphasize that this is a request. So I yield my time to the senator.
So I would like to start speaking. I want to start by talking about the bipartisan support for this bill that already exists. If you guys read the news, you'd notice Anderson Cooper clearly reported Secretary Kerry's a strong supporter of Senate Bill 14. So if the executive branch already...
Point of order.
I'm sorry, I'm currently
The
speaking.
secretary was supposed to recognize you before you spoke.
Yeah,
I recognize Senator Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be in order.
Okay.
Gotta keep order in this.
Thank you. So, yet again, before that interruption, there is bipartisan support for this bill. It passed a bipartisan committee that had Democrats and Republicans on it. Democrats did not offer or pass a single amendment to this bill. And it passed. We're here today, and we have some confusion about whether or not this bill directly inhibits or is not parallel to the president's executive agreement with Iran over their nuclear program. Secretary Kerry, I'm sorry, can you please?
Senator Kerry, you need to stay behind the line.
Secretary
Sorry.
Kerry.
So, that being said, let's look at what the executive agreement really is about. The executive agreement with Iran is only over their nuclear infrastructure. This bill...
You gave a false statement. Secretary Kerry said that he does not support this bill.
I simply stated what was news that you should have read, and if you'd like, it is on page... So if Senator Kerry, Secretary Kerry would like to flip-flop on this issue, that's fine with I guess that's what the Democrats would like to do, but I am not for flip-flopping. Excuse me, please, you don't have the right to talk. Please don't talk. You're interrupting me during my talk. Thank you. So, what we do know is that the majority of Democrats support...
Please quiet down.
The majority of Democrats, and many of you sitting in your chairs, actively support funding terrorist activities.
By Senator Kerry, as you just stated.
Senator Kerry? Senator Kerry. Okay, that being said, so point of order, please. He's getting interrupted.
Please, yeah. Please stop.
Thank you. So back to this issue. Democrats support stopping Iran from funding terrorism. Democrats also support getting American hostages back to our country. So that being said, I am open to amending this bill. So is our party. The emphasis is on protecting American people. There are Americans being held hostage against their will. 1. 2, our ally, specifically Israel, is directly being attacked by Hamas and other terrorist organizations that Iran has chosen to fund. So, yes, we can agree to amending issues like some of the things that this bill does with regard to some nuclear issues, and our party is more than open to that because our party recognizes that we were sent here to legislate and not flip-flop on issues like Secretary Kerry. I now yield the remainder of my time to the next party, and I'll be back. I can also recognize myself. It's open debate.
I want to take a minute to explain that there are aspects of this bill that we support, but Senator Paul is blatantly stating false things to this body. If you will please look at Section 9, Part C, there are a few House and Senate resolutions listed here. These bills range from defunding Planned Parenthood to unrelated Social Security restrictions. So to say that you're being transparent and that your goal is to create better negotiations is completely false and undermines the trust that should be between these two parties. So we cannot operate under this kind of deception, and I yield my time to Senator Markey.
The chair does not recognize Senator Markey. The chair recognizes instead myself, Senator Rand Paul.
Point of order. I'm the minority floor manager for the bill.
I recognize the minority floor manager and the majority floor manager. Point of order again. So just that being said, let me respond to that. Let me just respond to that accusation. Hey, can you please get
Point of order, you cannot recognize yourself.
I can recognize myself.
We recognize Senator Paul.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so my question is that Republicans and Democrats were both on this committee and everybody read this bill. So why is it Democrats allowed this bill to pass? I now relinquish, I yield the remainder of my time.
Senator Isaacson. I motion to adjourn.
The chair does not recognize, actually the chair recognizes the motion.
I second that motion.
Okay. We technically do need a majority vote, but. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the Senate has officially adjourned.
Fine, I go get faded.